that was like $160 round trip. You can't beat that for a plane ticket. I mean, granted, it's Southwest, it's a Greyhound in the sky, and I know snooty people like you don't fly Southwest anymore because you got all uppity.
No, dude, they're not cheap coming from Phoenix. Like every time you would see on Facebook, like the $49 low fare, that is not Phoenix. That's like everywhere else in the country except for Phoenix. And it comes down to, and I know, airlines are like cell phone carriers, where it just depends, right? It depends on where you're at, and the service is all over the place or whatever. And for here, American seems to be about the best, at least from my experience. But I think it just depends on where you're at and how close to the hubs you are or whatever. But Southwest is just atrocious out here, and you don't even save money with it. I mean, I get my tickets just as cheap going through American as I would with Southwest.
I get it, and like I said, I mean, Southwest is the Greyhound of the sky, which I think Frontier, and JetBlue, they own that. I think they own that title as well.
You know what? I'm not flying. I'm not flying Alaska Air.
No. Here's the thing. No. Here's the thing, though. The safest airline to fly is the latest one that just had an incident because they've done the safety stand down and all their checks and stuff. You didn't, what you heard after this, and that was a 737 Max, right? Boeing.
Yeah.
737 Max, dude. That thing is the Osprey of the civilian aircraft world. That thing has so many problems. Ever since it came out of production, it has problems. Even Boeing, the CEO of Boeing came out and quote acknowledging our mistake, end quote, today. Like, bro, that 737 has had systemic problems ever since it came off the production line. For some reason, to the point to where, go ahead.
One of the reasons why it's having so many problems is the same thing as the F-35. They're making it modular, so it's made to order. So that the problem with that door, well, one of the problems, the bolts weren't on good. That's part of it. And Alaska had actually put a flag on that plane, as you guys probably know, but they said no flying over water. So in other words, no long distance stuff. So there was already a flag on it, but where that part that blew off was it was a door, but it was a door plug. So they didn't actually have a door right there. It was a door plug. That's where a door should have been. But they ordered that particular Max with a door plug rather than a door. So it's modular. Anytime they should have learned this from the gosh darn Pontiac Fiero. You remember that car?
Yeah.
One of the worst cars ever made because it was modular. Everything was snap-on. I don't think the engine was, but like every part of that car, you could snap it into place. It was the first car that ever did that. But that's how this Max jet is. It's all modular. It's made to order. It's like, no, it should be. You just crank out these standard jets because back in the day, in the 60s, 70s, especially in the 70s and 80s, those airliners were like toaster ovens. Nothing's going to go wrong with them. They were so dependable because they crank them out on an assembly line. We learned that from our friend, Henry Ford. But instead, it's like, we're going to have this made to order, so you can, order your fleet however you want it, and you'll have to pay, how many ever $1 million extra to get your modular door plugs. I'm not saying that is the systemic issue. That's part of the problem, though. It's just.
I don't disagree. The thing that kills me, and I haven't looked at enough with the 737 Maxes to figure out, why all the issues and this and that. But here's what kills me about that one. It's exactly what you just said. They knew it already had a problem. Not only was it flagged, it was already throwing up pressure warnings. Okay. Now, I'm not a pilot. All right. I know we've got some listeners that are. Piloting aircraft is not one of my fortes. There are a lot of things that I would overlook in an airplane. Like, the toilet didn't flush right. Okay. You know what? Hey, this seat doesn't recline all the way. Okay. Maybe even, this seatbelt doesn't quite snap in all the way. Okay. Pressure warning in an airplane is not one of those things that I would just overlook. Like this, they've had this warning and they're like, hey, there's some pressure destabilization issues. So what do you mean? So we're losing pressure. Okay, so what does that mean? Just don't fly over water. You're good.
Well, and those pilots have their checklist, right? And I don't know. I'd like to hear from some pilots. I should ask my brother-in-law, who doesn't listen, who flew for American Airlines for a while. And the pilots are famous for having that checklist, right? And they go through it every single time, and it's exhaustive. And I would be interested to know if that pressure test, because when you're sitting there at the gate, right, and it's like, why is this thing taking so long to back out? They're testing, they're still running through their checklist. I just wonder if that pressure was part of the checklist, and instead of yes, no, it was like, well,
We
okay, we
already
can
know what
still
it is.
go. I mean,
Yeah,
what?
we already know what it is. It's that class 3 oil leak, in the Humvee and the motor pool. You're like, we already know it's there. You're good to go.
So, Josh, what I don't know if you saw the videos of the passengers who were inside the plane. Now, if everybody knows what the Luxor would do if a door plug blew off at 16,000 feet. I'm scrolling through my music and I'm putting on Leonard Greenbaum, "Spirit in the Sky." You guys know if I'm coming in hot, I'm going to be listening to "Spirit in the Sky." That's how I'm going to go meet my maker. But I was actually really pleasantly, I don't know, surprised or whatever, that no one was hysterical. It didn't seem like it from the videos I've seen and from the testimonials. Everybody was like pretty cool with it. Like, okay, let's remain calm. There were some people asking if they could hold the person's hand next to them. They didn't know. And I was like, my faith in humanity isn't often restored or repaired, but I got a kick out of that, man. I thought that was kind of cool that nobody completely lost their shit.
Yeah, I didn't see in the videos I saw, I didn't see anybody completely losing their mind, which was good. I think a large part of that, though, I mean, the aircraft was still, in control. It wasn't inverted, or it wasn't in a nose down dive like it's coming into Baghdad. Yeah, right. That was inverted. Um, and when we did the corkscrew landings, in Iraq and Afghanistan and places like that, wasn't, they put it on the deck pretty quick, as those pilots can do. And they, when they're sitting there at the gate, they're going through. I should ask my brother-in-law, who doesn't listen either, but he's a pilot. He's not a commercial pilot, but he has his own plane and he flies, and he's pretty smart dude. They probably have tolerances, right? They're like, okay, well, this can be off a little bit, but as long as it's inside the envelope, we're fine, right? There's a tolerance for that pressure, even if it's right on the cusp, like you said. Roger, it's like, that's fine. The commander can authorize that. Yeah, man, nah, dude, you just cross that out. We're good to go. But you would think that at a certain point, it's like, hey, yeah, man, we've got some issues with this bird. Just don't fly it over water. It's like, really? But dude, I don't care if you're over water or over land. When you're coming in from 30 grand at terminal velocity, out of control, like, it doesn't matter whether you're over water or land, dude. Nobody's walking away from that.
Further proof that they knew something was wrong. No one was sitting next to that door plug. It's like, I guarantee you those two seats were left open. It's like Alaska Air and Boeing, whoever made that decision to be like, it's okay. I would say that's probably Alaska Air, but I mean, come on, the FAA had to have some kind of something, right? So they didn't sit anybody in that row because they were like, well, we don't want anybody to get sucked out. But at the end of the day, even if two people would have gotten sucked out or injured, the result would be the same for their stock. The result would be the same.
Yeah.
I mean, there'd just be a little bit more blood.
And and I don't want to, change subjects just yet. But that is akin to, well, they were known to the FBI, right? Every single time. So the 737 MAX, I'm not going to read all of these issues that it's had because it dates back to October 2018. And there's at least 20 something entries on here about all of the issues that the 737 MAX has had, to crashes in, overseas, crashes in the States. And it's, 18-month investigation by the House of Representatives finds that Boeing failed in its design and development of the MAX, as well as its transparency with the FAA. Boeing tried to cover up some of the testing data that they had when they were testing the 737 MAX. current and former Boeing company directors, they reached a $237.5 million settlement with shareholders to settle lawsuits over safety oversight of the 737 MAX. That was in 2021. And then in July 2023, they're like, oh, well, the 737 MAX 7 deliveries delayed. Boeing takes a major hit on their stock. Dude, that plane is the Osprey of the civilian aviation world. To the point, and one of our friends made a post on LinkedIn. He actually caught some heat for it, which is completely ridiculous. But to the point to where he's like, is it to the point now to where I'm booking airline tickets, to fly somewhere, with my family and stuff? Do I choose an airline that is still flying old Airbuses, vice, flying an airline that's, fielding, going to fly me somewhere on a 737 MAX? And you're right. The modular thing is the modular thing is not good. You should not make a plane to be a Swiss Army knife. That's not what it should be. Right. I go back to the refrigerators, my parents have a Frigidaire, and I'm pretty sure this thing was made in the 70s. It's a disgusting, like, baby vomit yellow. And they've had that thing forever. And it's running. It still works. Like, that thing is time itself. And yet, my Samsung refrigerator that was brand new, put in this house in 2015, when it was built, and the one we live in now, like, it's on its last leg. Like, it's like, dude, I can't. It's 8 years old. I can't make it anymore. Going on 9, it's like, I can't do it. But yet, you've got appliances from the 70s still running, still going, So, yeah,
It's all about cost, man. It's all about cost.
Yeah.
How cheap can you make it, right? Can you mass produce it? And there was a period of time when people were willing to pay extra for those luxury items. That's not anymore. Nowadays it's a race to the bottom. It's no different than the lowest price technically acceptable contracts that the government uses. It's a race to the bottom. And so I know that I've got to be at $9.99 for the Thanksgiving. So, and I'm not knocking anybody for looking at it. I mean, I do the same thing, right? You're like, hey, it's a refrigerator. It's got A, B, C, D, or E, or whatever. But those cost efficiencies weren't necessarily there during the 70s and 60s. And I think, here's the scary part about this thing. I'm fairly certain that, well, two things. One, I'm glad I own an iPhone, because did you hear about the iPhone that survived the 16,000 foot fall? Because that thing was 16,000 feet up in the air when it blew its door, or blew the door panel. So an iPhone survived that fall. So, no, I don't, and I guess they're still looking for the door plug, but I am fairly convinced that we will never hear anything else outside of just the initial reporting, because of loss of consumer confidence, right?
Mhm.
Or traveler confidence. It's no different than the rails and the railways. They were talking about all the train accidents, and people are like, well, how many of these happened? I've never heard of a train crash. And they're like, no, there's actually about 1,100 of them a year. And then that quickly just went away, because you don't want to take away the faith of the consumer base that says, I'm not flying anymore. I don't think you ever hear anything else about it.
Well, that's why risk managers and companies get paid so much, right? Business risk, like how much money are we going to lose on this versus how much are we going to make? Now, you guys tell me what movie this is from. A new car built by my company leaves somewhere traveling 60 miles per hour. The rear differential locks up. The car crashes and burns with everyone trapped inside. Now, should we initiate a recall? Take the numbers of the vehicle in the field, A, multiply by the probable rate of failure, B, multiply by the average out-of-court settlement, C. A times B times C equals X. If X is less than the cost of a recall, we don't do one. That's from Fight Club. And when he's telling the lady on the plane, and she's like, are there a lot of these kind of accidents? Because you wouldn't believe. But yeah, man, you're right. It's like, this is going to go away from the news. People are going to continue traveling. I'll tell you what, I've got a couple of business trips coming up, and I'm not going to have a choice what type of airliner I fly on, because I have to go through a travel system. And if it's on a 737 MAX, I've got Norman Greenbaum, Spirit in the Sky queued up and ready to go that whole flight. But you're right. This is all just going to go away. There's too much money to be lost. and it's frightening. It really is.
And it wasn't just the one seat that was open. Both of those seats were open. When have you seen that happen? What flight have you been on where like, hey, yeah, this whole row, yeah, we just didn't book it. We didn't fill it.
That's called indicators and warnings, right, Josh?
Come on, man.
That's right. No, it goes back. It goes back. I remember I was listening to and this is not new. I was listening to Adam Carolla. And I don't know if he was on. I think it was one of the times he was on Rogan, and he talked about a couple of guys that he went to high school with, and they had a Pinto, and they got rear-ended. And you remember the Pintos, they had the gas tanks in the rear, and they were getting rear-ended and basically exploding, catch on fire. Well, he had two friends that died in a Pinto that got rear-ended really hard and caught on fire. And then afterwards, it came out that Ford knew that was an issue, but it was cheaper for Ford just to pay, just to settle out of court with the families than it was for Ford to recall all those vehicles and and fix the problem, because it would have required them to basically move the gas tank. On those, so it was just cheaper for them to pay the lawsuits and vice versa. And we talked about it before. We mentioned this. A lot of companies, when we're talking to them, we're sitting down. It's like, hey, look, check it out. Here's where your vulnerabilities are. Let's fix these. And they go, okay, well, is it cheaper for me just to pay for the damage assessment than it is for me to pay you to fix it? Because if it's cheaper for me to just pay for the damage assessment, then we're good. I don't care. And so, but a lot of companies have gone that way. And, you're right. Risk managers, hey man, it's there's a lot of work out there for you, but at the end of the day, any big company, they're going to look at you and say, okay, that's great. And they don't even care about the reputational risk these days. That used to be a thing to where it's like, man, I'm really concerned about the reputational risk to my company. Not these days, not anymore, because companies just don't care. Because we have such a short attention spans, writ large, that this will all be forgotten, in the next news cycle, and we'll continue to go about our ways, as the lemmings that we are.
Yeah, I'd say it's already been forgotten, because yesterday we had last night we had the college football playoff or the championship game, right, with Michigan and Washington. And going up into the game, like I don't have a dog in the fight, man. Like I don't care for Michigan. Actually, I can't stand the Harbaugh brothers. I can't stand either one of them. But I'm an ACC guy. I'm a Carolina guy, so I don't really care, Michigan, Washington, whatever. But as we got into game time, like I actually started getting angry. We were sitting here, texting back and forth. And Josh, I don't think you watched the game, right? I think just Luke did. Luke and I did.
No, I didn't watch it.
I started getting angry because I'm like, they literally let a team that admitted to cheating this year, right? They let them in the playoffs. And okay, Michigan won the game, and they go to the championship game, and they won the championship game. So I understand the players had to play, but they admitted to cheating this year. And then you still I know Josh hasn't forgotten about this, and I won't either for a while, but then you got a team that went that went undefeated in a Power 5 conference, and they don't even get into the Final Four. Dude, it started making me angry. And it goes back to, like, remember with the Houston Astros, and we've said this a couple of times. If you told me that I could win a championship this year, get caught cheating, get suspended 2 years, 3 years or whatever, and then come back and win another championship, I would cheat every single year. Right?
100%.
And with the way the CFP is set up right now, where ESPN owns those rights, because, dude, the announcers, they weren't saying a word about it. I think I heard one person mention, about, all the issues that Harbaugh had to overcome, all the challenges that Harbaugh had to overcome this year. And you could tell somebody like kicked them underneath the table. So anyway, yeah, Michigan football, man, they're great. And look at them now. And they're kicking butt, and it's us against the world because you cheated. I mean, it's that whole narrative they put out there, right? And the media is complicit with it. They put out this whole, it's us against the world. Like, you think you're freaking Tupac, man. And it's like, no, you actually cheated, dude. That's why it's, us against the world, because you cheated and you're cheaters. And the CFP, I didn't realize was not, at least from what I was reading, because I started getting so angry when I started reading about this whole thing. But the CFP does not fall under the NCAA. It's its own entity.
Yeah.
And so even if the NCAA is like, hey, we're going to vacate wins and this, which they won't, because we talked about it. Next year, they'll go to 12 games and everybody will forget and nobody will care. But the NCAA can come back and vacate wins, and it doesn't matter because the CFP controls their own playoff and championship series, and it is what it is.
Yep. And you know who they're accountable to?
Nobody.
You know who else gets paid a lot?
ESPN.
Well, yeah, but within companies, and make no mistake, universities are for-profit businesses. You know who else gets paid a lot is public image consultants.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy, because man, they went right into full-on mode. I guarantee it. When the cheating scandal came about, man, that's when they started to shape that narrative, baby. And as people know what they're doing. They do know what they're doing because, like you guys said, it blew over. And when you brought that up, Roger, I was like, yeah, what's up with that? I can't believe this. But I don't have a dog in that fight either. I do know that Michigan is a huge, like we said earlier, that school is a huge market, a much bigger market than Washington. And Washington was the underdog. So it's like, well, might as well put $3 on the underdog and hope for the best. And I'll tell you what, though, I know that Ted hates sports and a few other people do, but we won't be on this all night. But man, that Michael Penix Jr. he did not look comfortable that entire game. I think the nerves, if I had to guess, I think the nerves kind of got the best of him, man, because he just didn't look like, because Michigan is good, but they ain't that good. I don't know.
They had their
I'm
shots,
wrong.
right? Washington had their shots, they had their opportunities, but like you said, dude, 3, 4, 5 errant throws. And my only guess is, I mean, one, it's a big stage, right? You're talking about college age kids. You're playing, prime time, Monday night, championship game against Michigan, Harbaugh, Harbaugh's brother shows up, that big D-bag, so I get the pressure. And, I think when you play in the Pac-12, and I'm not minimizing the Pac-12, but sports are a little different and they're viewed a little differently in the Pac-12 than they are the Big 10, the ACC, or the SEC, or even the Big 12, right? I think even with like the Big 12 and the ACC, SEC, the Big 10, you are in the national spotlight like all the time, and you're filling up these 100,000 person stadiums. And outside of like old school USC and Washington's been good, hit or miss, but you just don't have those type of atmospheres in the Pac-12 on a weekly basis like you do with the SEC or the Big 10. I mean, you're going to have that all the time. So, hey, dude, at the end of the day, it was a good game. It was better than I thought it was going to be. I mean, the way it started, I was like, ooh. I think Luke and I were texting at the same time. It's like, man, this could, I actually had some money on it as well, but it was, man, this could be ugly like really quick. It looks like I might be hopping on Call of Duty sooner than later. And then, then Michigan kind of calmed down a little bit and Washington calmed down a little bit. And they started, they had some stops, but, and Luke, you hit it on the head. I think Washington stopped them 3 or 4 times in a row, but then Washington didn't score. And Michigan finally got the ball back. You're like, dude, points are going up on the board. And it was like 15 seconds later. There you go. Michigan, put up a touchdown, points up on the board, and then they just ran away with it from there. So, and I think for the first time, and I think I saw it during a commercial. So, and maybe Josh, you might have some more insight into this. So it looks like next year's playoffs is going to be a legit playoff. So that was my concern because they kept calling it playoffs, 12 teams. Okay, well, does the 12th team have a shot at winning the national championship like in college basketball? And I guess from what I've seen from it is, yeah, that's going to be the case. So you'll have, however many teams are playing in that first week. And then my assumption is, well, you can't say Power 5 or Power 4. They would automatically have a first round bye. Then you continue playing it, its way out, single elimination till you have your championship game. But I guess my question is, 12 teams, is that too many? Is that enough? Or is that spot on?
I don't think it's enough. I don't think it solves the problem. I don't think it solves the problem at all because you're going to have, all right, so you got 12 teams. You expanded it to 12 teams. Okay. So there's number 13, number 12 and 13. How are you, it goes back for me. It goes back to what are you ranking teams on? because you told us this year that wins don't matter and losses don't matter. Or
so why not
go
the NFL model? Because I was thinking what you were saying that. So why not go the NFL model and say, okay, hey, guess what? You Power 5 conferences, you're winner of that conference. That's your first week bye. That's your top 5, right?
Yep.
And then from then, like the NFL does, then you fill it in based on record, strength of schedule, yada yada yada.
I think it's a top. I think you just go with the top 25. Hey, who is in that? And pick up, pick a poll. Here's the top 25 teams. And here's the playoff. There you go.
How would that work mathematically with rounds with 25?
Dude, I'm a Florida public schools guy. Don't ask me about math. I'm the big idea guy here. Somebody else can figure out the minutia of it.
I'll take it one further and say it's 32. You're really not talking that big of a deal. I think my dad and I were discussing this on the drive back from Houston week ago, however long that was, and if you go 64 and shorten the season to 10 games, that was the Mike Leach thing. He had it all mapped out. It would still go to the first week of January. You shorten it to 10 games, you have 64 teams in there. I mean, you look at the money, like, okay, so everyone's like, well, look at all the money you're leaving on the table for schools like Liberty or, these schools that barely get into a bowl. You have 64 teams. Dude, I think 58 or something like that play in bowl games now. So you're actually bringing out 6 more if it's 64 teams, just like the basketball. It's like, well, I think it would be great, dude. I think it would be a lot of fun, but I don't know. I mean, there's probably a lot of roadblocks in the way of that, but money is not one of them. It would bring in just as much or more money because, like Roger was saying, I think every once in a while, every 5 years, you're going to have a 64 seed being number 1. Every once in a while that might happen, or give them a good game. A lot of Cinderella stories, everybody loves that, the underdog, and seeing, I can't even think of it, Harden Simmons or somebody. I don't even know if they're Division I, but watching them play at Georgia, it's just like, oh man, can we root for these guys? And think of all the point spreads, Roger, you could bet on.
Yeah, 64. However many you want, but I don't think 12. I don't think 12 is going to cut it either. Because again, you're going to run into the same problem that you ran into this year. You have a college football playoff committee who's not accountable to anybody. They're going to decide who those 12 teams are. They're going to go, and it's not going to be based on record. It's not going to be based on you won your conference championship. It's not. It's going to be who do they like, who do they not like. Those are going to be your 12 teams. And who's to say, hey, we're number 13. We won all our games. Everybody in front of us won all our games, won all their games too. Possible? No, probably not, or, probably whatever. But, you're going to run into the same problem. I like the Mike Leach thing. Cut the season to 10 games. And then everybody into, for the playoffs, because right now there are 42 bowl games. 42.
Oh, there's 42. Okay.
There are 42 bowl games.
So
right
how many teams is that? I know you Florida math.
42 times 2, bro.
Yeah, see?
Right?
I mean, that is less. I guess that is less teams overall if you had 64 teams, because you'd have 32 bowls to start out with, but you'd have, wow, dude, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
There's 42 bowl games. When, back in the 80s, when, watching college football and, going to games and stuff like that, how many bowl games were there? There was the Rose Bowl, the Fiesta, the Cotton, the Sugar,
Peach,
and the Peach Bowl. That was it, right? I mean, those were the big Orange Bowl. Yeah. I mean, those were the big ones. That was it. There really was no other bowl game. And it was like, now you have 42 bowl games. Just instead of doing all those damn bowl games, make it a 42, game playoff. There you go.
I think they're
bowl games. These are playoffs.
They have to, because they had over 200, and I think Luke was kind of picking on me at first when I was talking about it, but they had over 200 players opt out. Right. And when you look at the sponsorship of these bowls, now I'm not talking about, well, you could say even the big games, look at, what happened to FSU, it obviously isn't going to happen in the championship game, But once you get down to like the Duke Mayo Bowl, which I thought that was a joke, like I didn't know that was actually a real bowl. I thought somebody was just effing with me. I was like, oh, that's an actual bowl. Like these players that are transferring because they don't want to get hurt, right? Before they start their final season somewhere else or whatever, or going to the NFL, they're like, well, I'm playing in a meaningless game, so I'm not going to play. And let me tell you this, Duke Mayo is not going to pay $50 million or whatever it is they pay for a 10-year contract for third string players. That ain't going to happen. And I know, the Georgia, head coach came out and said, oh, I don't want to hear this crap about people saying they're not. Hey, don't get me. The players on the field will play their asses off. Okay. But guess what? If I'm a ticket holder, that's not who I came to see. I didn't even watch Carolina play in their bowl game. I mean, I'm not I'm a big Carolina fan, but once I found out that the starting quarterback was sitting out, once I found out their top wide receivers, is like, yep, this game's over. It's done. Like I wouldn't watch it on TV, much less pay for a ticket. And had I paid for a ticket, I'd have been pissed off. So I think, Josh, like, you're talking about that, going from those 4-2 bowls, you just have a 14-2 team playoff. I don't think we're very far removed from that. And what's crazy is it seems like hearing all the pundits talk about it, like, and these are supposedly smart guys and gals, they're way more in tune into this than we are. They never thought this would happen. Like nobody thought this would actually happen. Like, why would you even play if you're not in the final four teams with a shot at the national championship? I mean, hey, we've got the college football playoff national championship bracket over here. Hey, the rest of you guys just go play your bowl games. And I know, Josh, you're supposed to go to the NFL next year, but you'll surely play in the Fiesta Bowl or whatever the hell it is and give your all. I mean, it's got to go that way. They don't have a choice.
Right. Yeah. Looking at some of the bowl games, if I'm, if I have a shot at making it in the NFL, when it comes down to the Hometown Lenders Bahamas Bowl or the Duluth Trading Cure Bowl or the Wasabi Fenway Bowl or the Cricket Celebration Bowl, yeah, man, I'm probably not showing up to those. I'm probably saving. Yeah, I'm probably like, nah, man, because that's where you're gonna get hurt. You're gonna get hurt in the
Wasabi Bowl.
And yeah, you're gonna get hurt, dude. This is a bowl game. The Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl presented by Stifel. You're gonna get hurt in there, and you're gonna ruin your chances of playing in the NFL and being financially set for life because you got hurt in the Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl.
Some of those kids, I agree with you, 100%. But some of these kids are on the bubble for the NFL, right? And they may see that last bowl game as their last chance to really show people. But I think that may be the exception. But I do agree with you. It's like, man, if you've got a shot, man, every second that, because football is a chaotic sport, man. A lot of stuff can happen, man. Just ask Joe Theismann and what's his name, that other quarterback that's led
Alex Smith.
Yeah, oof. Just ask them what can go wrong. But yeah, I wouldn't. If I thought I had a choice and I could opt out of the bowl game, yep, I'm opting out, baby. Unless there's a national championship on the line, which is going to raise my my numbers. If I go to the NFL, this guy's a national champion. We like him on Sunday Night Football when he says he went to the U or whatever it is.
Yeah. It's chaotic because you never know what's going to happen. I mean, Jordan Travis, when he got tackled, that was a hip tackle. It wasn't he didn't get, bowled over. He didn't get, run over by a train. It was just one of those little hip tackles. It was akin to when Dale Earnhardt Sr. got killed. Dude, he didn't hit the wall that fast. He wasn't going that fast at all when he hit the wall at Daytona. He hit it just right, and that was that. And, that can happen on the field, running. Next thing you know, your ACL's gone, and hey, man, that's it.
Rest assured.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Luke.
I was just going to ask, was that a neck break with Dale? Did he break his neck? Okay.
Yeah. That's when NASCAR came out and did the whole helmet, you got to basically latch it into this, big thing on the back and on the seat to hold your head still so you don't snap forward.
Rest assured, they have it all figured out. Kelly Whiteside, who is a professor at Montclair State and a former USA Today CFB writer, will have this all figured out. Rod West, the group president, Entergy Corporation, former Notre Dame linebacker, will have it figured out. Will Shields, former Nebraska offensive lineman, will have this all figured out. Oh, by the way, those are all people that sit on the CFP committee that make these decisions. Like they didn't even, at least with like in college basketball, you have the AP poll, and then you have like the ESPN coaches poll. Okay. And I think for college basketball, most of them are pretty objective. I mean, they give pretty fair rankings, and a lot of times they mirror the AP, except when you get down to like 9, 10, and 11, you'll see some deviations here, 1 or 2. But it's like, dude, you didn't even pick names up here that are recognizable, that are like involved in the sport on a day-to-day basis. Like seriously, Kelly Whiteside. I would put Josh's knowledge. I'd put you, not me. I'm not a big college football guy, but you two, I would put your knowledge in history of college football up against Kelly Whiteside, a professor at Montclair State. I mean, like what, it's just, none of these. You've got a couple on here that it's director of athletics, NC State, which Boo Corrigan, everybody hates his guts. And then you got the athletics director, Kentucky, director of athletics, Navy. Man, let's maybe skip over that one there. Retired former head coach at Ohio, Wake Forest, Baylor. We could probably skip over him as well. Director of athletics, Michigan. Okay, you could probably add him in there. But half these people in here is like, dude, I don't think you know any more about college football than what I know.
Or it just goes to show you it's not about the game, right? When Whiteside is running, it's not about the game. It's about something else. But what I want to do is, if Ted is still listening, I want to make sure he's not over the next 5 minutes. So we went to see last Friday night. We went to see the Iron Claw, that the Von Erich story, basically focused on Kevin. And man, oh man, I mean I'm going to say it was good, but it's A24 is the ones who put that out. They're also putting out that Civil War movie that's going to be coming out in March, I believe. The budget wasn't that great, but man, the story was sure powerful. And the Von Erich family is a professional wrestling family out of Texas, out of Plano back in the day, and they were real popular in Texas. Josh was saying, I don't really know much about the Von Erichs. I'm like, you didn't? Because back when I was following wrestling, when I was, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, it was still regional. You still had the regional powerhouses back then, and the Von Erichs were that Texas powerhouse. Ric Flair let Kerry Von Erich beat him one time for the title, and that was a really big deal. I don't know how their dad Fritz Von Erich talked him into that, but he did. And boy, I'll tell you what, man, Zac Efron, I think as far as male physiques go in movies, that's top 3 I've ever seen. It was amazing. Like Chris Hemsworth is pretty crazy in Thor, but what Zac Efron did to his body, unreal. I was a little let down by I think the actor that played Kerry Von Erich, he's a good actor, but Kerry Von Erich was the big brother. That dude was a freaking brick house. And this guy just wasn't that. He didn't reflect that. But it was a good movie. I think you guys would enjoy it. It's sad because that what happened to that family is tragic. I won't do any spoilers, but man, rough movie, man. Tough to watch.
They all are, dude. There are very few like wrestling biographies that we watch on A&E and that we've talked about in earlier episodes. There are very, very few happy endings. We're like, yeah, I wrestled for like 20 years and I retired and just kind of went off and had the white picket fence in the house and played, spent time with my kids. Right.
No, yeah, dude. I don't know that I've seen. And I watched, and we I know you guys have too on A&E. Some of the documentaries, like Mankind. And,
dude, some of them are horrible, man.
Everybody, like, dude, they are brutal. They are absolutely brutal. I mean, in every single one of them that I've seen, like, it is a tragedy. Whether it's whether it's Benoit, whether it's Macho Man, Rick Rude, Rowdy Roddy Piper, like they have.
I don't even think that Mickey Rourke movie, The Wrestler, I don't even think it does it justice. Like they try to portray that how that is. Like I'm just, dude,
it was really good. Yeah, no. I thought that one was very good. I thought Mickey Rourke was phenomenal in that.
Yep.
But yeah, I think reality is a little bit sadder than the Wrestler.
And you have the redemption stories on there as well. On the A&E where. Everything's okay now, but man, for a while, it sure as hell wasn't. The one that really warms my heart, and it's so sad, is the Lex Luger one, Man, you talk about a dude that has been humbled by life, but
Pakistani roids.
he has a positive outlook now, even though it's like this dude was built like, what was his nickname? Lex Luger. What was his nickname?
The total package.
The total package. And dude, when he walked in, it's like, Jesus, this guy's on another level. Now he's paralyzed from the waist down. They don't know exactly what caused it, but paralyzed from the waist down. He looks awful, but he has a positive outlook. You know, he's saved. He goes to church and all this stuff, and he's just he talks the way he talks. It's like, man, you have every reason to complain. You have every reason to cry on camera and all that stuff. But man, he is positive. He's got a smile on his face. He feels lucky to be alive. And it's like, boy, but did he have to suffer? You're like, what's his name? The Olympian.
Ronnie Coleman.
No, the other guy. Kurt Angle.
Oh, yeah.
God bless, dude.
Dude, I was saying, so, you know, with Lex Luger and him not being able to walk, you know, being paralyzed, that's akin to Ronnie Coleman. Ronnie Coleman can't walk. And dude, that's roids, because you look how big Ronnie Coleman is. I mean, that dude, he's a monstrosity, and you're like, okay, that's not natty, for sure. Yeah, dude, the Lex Luger story was absolutely brutal. Yeah, but there's not many wrestling stories that are not, the Von Erich. There were 6. How many Von Erich brothers were there? 5 or 6?
Well, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Dude, they had like a whole tribe.
There were 5, and there was one that I think there were 5 brothers. They didn't cover one brother in the movie, but
they had if I remember correctly, they had a kid who died pretty young.
Yeah, at 5, he died at like 3 years old, 5 years old, something. Yeah. But the Von Erich curse goes to this. It's like I can't remember. Atkinson was their name, and it's like, so the dad, he started out as a professional wrestler way back in the day when it was really rough. And he's like, yeah, John Atkinson is not a good wrestling name. So he changed his name to his, I believe, his mother's side's maiden name, which was Von Erich. And he named himself Fritz Von Erich. Now, that's a pretty cool name. But the problem is the Von Erich family had that name on his mother's side had a really tragic, there's a lot of tragedies that followed them throughout the years. And sure enough, when he changed his name, bad stuff started happening, like the 5-year-old dying. And it's just like, they call it the Von Erich curse. And like with Kerry Von Erich, Jiminy Christmas, do you guys realize that dude lost his leg in a motorcycle accident and continued to wrestle? He just laced up his boot, wore a wooden or whatever, a prosthetic, and continued to wrestle. He wrestled Ric Flair with a prosthetic.
Really?
Nobody knew. Nobody knew that.
Holy cow.
I mean, these guys, it's just, it's such a shame.
Yeah, I remember it was just one thing after another. Once I started following the Von Erichs, in the 80s, because I was a big wrestling fan, or wrestling. And it was, dude, man, it was like getting put on the cover of Madden. It was like, oh, you're on the cover of Madden this year? Done. That's it. You're done. You're tearing an ACL tomorrow. Oh,
it was, they portrayed Ric Flair in the movie. I think you'd get a kick out of how they portrayed him. It was cool. You should, I would say wait till it comes out on streaming and then watch it. Because it's not as good as The Wrestler. It's good, but The Wrestler is a better movie.
Dude, The Wrestler was really good. Did you guys see Hulk Hogan got saved?
Yeah. I think he was baptized, right? Yeah, he was baptized a week ago or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, dude, he was on Rogan talking about that stuff a few months back, and I would have sworn, based on how he was talking in the podcast, that he was already saved. But I guess he took the step.
Yeah,
good for him.
Yeah, I just saw a quick clip of it on X, I think it was, that he got baptized, and then he afterwards, the next couple of days or whatever, he was preaching the good word, which is it's cool to see.
Dude, I would love to see Hulk Hogan preach the word. I would pay for that. I mean, one of my favorite memes is the Maury Povich meme, where it's like the paternity or the genetic results are in, and not everyone is your brother. And Hulk Hogan's like,
You know what though? I think a
wow.
lot of guys like him and even Lex Luger, which I was just reading on Lex Luger. So apparently, he's starting to actually recover. He's in a wheelchair, but he's not
No kidding.
paralyzed. He can actually walk short distances, and he's blaming it on. Well, I'm not. I shouldn't say blame it. I guess he was on a flight back in
Oh yeah.
whatever, and they're saying that he basically cut the blood flow off. And I don't know because his muscles were too big or whatever, but and his neck was crooked over. But anyway, I think when you get down to that old school wrestling with like the era of Lex Luger and Hulk Hogan, they're probably just thankful to be alive, dude. I mean, they look around, right? And they could be like, I should be dead. I mean, especially when you look back in the era that Lex Luger was running in and Hulk Hogan in his early years, where, I mean, dude, it was drugs and these guys were strung out, right? And booze and traveling and just the wear and tear on your body and the steroids. I mean, he's got to just be thinking like, man, I'm happy to be alive and to be in the shape that the guy's in at his age. I mean, he's pretty yoked for his age, man.
And I think they've broken the code in the modern wrestling world. I think they finally I think Hulk Hogan kind of paved the way for these guys to actually have a living. You know, he appeared in that Rocky 3, and that was kind of what launched his one of the things that launched his WWE or WWF. Was it WWE? Yeah, it was WWF career. And it's like, wow, okay, maybe we can actually make something. The Rock, you've got Batista, you've got John Cena, all these guys, I think, but those are all superstars, right? You still got your jobbers out there who are probably struggling, but it's good to see. Like, I don't think the Batista story, when they tell that someday, is going to be a sad one, or like The Rock, or John Cena. I mean, these guys seem to have it together. It's more of a business now, and yeah, like Brock Lesnar. I don't know.
Wrestling hit its high. I think wrestling hit its high watermark in the early '90s, and I think
just like everything else, sports, music, everything, dude.
Well, like the country as a whole.
Like you're talking like the Attitude Era. When the Attitude Era started to fade, that was when was.
I think it was done. Because it's now, like you said, now it is a business. It was a business back then, but it was still, the storylines were good. The story, like you could see, it was truly about entertainment. And now it's about business. And you saw guys like the one thing I liked about The Wrestler, I thought it was more authentic. Back in the 80s, representing the 70s, 80s era wrestling, because Mickey Rourke, I mean, granted, that dude was big for that movie. He had some muscle on him, but he wasn't like Lex Luger. I remember when you had like Lex Luger in The Ultimate Warrior, dude, just cut up. I mean, just straight, I mean, cocaine's a hell of a drug. But you go back and, dude, you remember the Four Horsemen? Like Ric Flair was the most cut up guy out of the Four Horsemen. You look at Arn Anderson. Arn Anderson that dude was built like a brick, outhouse. He was big, dude. He had some mass on him, but he wasn't cut up. Neither was Tully Blanchard. And
that was all Vince McMahon.
The Freebirds.
That was all Vince McMahon. When Vince McMahon bought up all the regionals and started carried on the WWE, the conglomerate. That was his. Hulk Hogan was his stereotypical wrestler. That's what he wanted. Somebody who's larger than life, big muscles, and you start seeing that now where it goes back to that. Every now and then they try to bring in, and I get it to an extent because I mean you do have some superior athletes. They're all great athletes, but see a guy my size doing that, it's like meh. You see a dude like Brock Lesnar, that dude is larger than life, right? I met Sid Vicious at a wrestling event years ago as a kid, right? And I was all like,
big,
I don't know,
man.
Dude, and I was like 4 feet tall, whatever the hell I was. That is a big, like he was bigger than life. And that's what you want.
That's a large human. And I mean, I just hate it. I don't know, man. It peaked for me. It peaked in the early '90s, and I really just stopped watching it after that. I'd watch it here and there, but the documentaries, now they're the best. I think the latest one I saw that passed away was the Iron Sheik.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That dude was a wrestler in Iran, man, like a amateur wrestler in Iran, right?
Yeah. And he was another one of those dudes, man. That guy was crazy strong,
he was an Olympic wrestler,
but he wasn't cut up. He wasn't cut up at all. Like Hacksaw Jim Dugan, dude. That guy, strong, not cut.
Now, you know who does watch a lot of wrestling, or I'm sure got caught up on wrestling? I bet the SecDef watches a lot of wrestling, and I bet he had plenty of time over the holidays to catch up.
Yeah, I bet he did.
Oh, that guy. That guy. So let's talk about that. Wow. How do you even approach? So basically, it goes like this for those of y'all that aren't following. Lloyd Austin is the Secretary of Defense. All three of us disagreed that he should even be in the role because of conflict of interest. The job he held before was with Raytheon, I believe. And, whatever, is so many potential ethical violations. He just was not a good choice. But so over New Year's, I guess it was, he went to the hospital and basically did not tell anyone. Whatever surgery he was undergoing did not go well, and he ended up in the ICU for 3 days, and no one knew. We're still trying to find out or the media is trying to find out whether his deputy knew, whether the chief of staff knew. But the fact is, this guy just went to the hospital and just didn't tell anyone. That's kind of the story. Now, there's so many different angles to take with this. At first, it came out that it was an elective surgery. And it's like, what's this guy getting a boob job? What's going on? Then it came out today, oh no, he had prostate cancer. Now, we can kick this around quite a bit, but Josh, if you're a private in the U.S. Army and you decide to go to the hospital and you don't show up for formation, what happens to you?
You're getting listed as AWOL. You're getting a minimum, especially you disappear for 3 days, 4 days, and you don't tell anybody where you're at. What you will be listed as AWOL. You're definitely getting UCMJ.
Follow-up question. Does a private in the U.S. Army or an ensign or whatever they call them in the Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, are they in any way in the chain of command for release of nuclear weapons?
No, not even remotely close. And that's really, and so those are really the questions, right? On this. Austin's not brand new. He's not a straight civilian who, got appointed to become the Secretary of Defense. The guy's a retired 4-star general. He knows those, those CCIRs, those, Commander's Critical Information Requirements, that, hey, these are things you wake the boss up for. Doesn't matter time of day. Hey, man, I'm about to be out. I'm in the chain of command. I'm 6th in line for the presidency. All right. So when you look at the succession of the president, he is number 6 in line. And he is in the operational chain of command, not only for the release of nuclear weapons, but, just if we're going to drone somebody, he's in that chain too. And we did drone somebody on January the 4th, I think it was 3rd or 4th, in Baghdad, of all places, right? An Iranian, one of the PMC commanders. Now, who adjudicated that? Who adjudicated that strike? Because it wasn't Austin. And according to his deputy's already come out and said that her office already came out and said it wasn't her, because they're saying she didn't know because she was drinking mojitos down in Isla Verde in Puerto Rico. So it really, who was adjudicating the Pentagon support for the war in Gaza and Ukraine? And oh, by the way, China is provoking Taiwan right now. And Austin is hiding out in the hospital playing Candy Crush for 4 days and didn't tell anybody. Here's dude, the other thing with that, the strike in Baghdad, who followed up in the aftermath with that? Who followed up with, his Israeli counterparts, his Ukrainian counterparts? Because supposedly he had a touch point with his Israeli counterpart every single day. Well, what happened for those 4 days? Who had those touch points? It wasn't the deputy, because the deputy's already said that she didn't do it because she was on leave. So who's doing it? Who's minding the store? Who is it? And here's the other thing. There were some people people knew where he was. And it wasn't just, his, well, I told the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. No, dude, there's other people that know where you were, because the Secretary of Defense national security, council cabinet member, 6th in line to the presidency. That dude doesn't travel by himself. He's not by himself damn near at any given time unless he's on the shitter. That guy has a communications team that travels with him. He's got deputies that travel with him everywhere he goes, even when he's traveling in CONUS, even when he goes, other places within the NCR, he's got folks traveling with him. What did they know? What were they told? Hey, the boss is just working from home. You don't need to be near him. Like, no, dude, like I'm his combo support. Everything. Like, why? And you didn't tell the president. You did not tell the president of the United States, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, that you were going to be out for 4 days. And here's the other question I heard anybody ask in the media. How the hell does a president not know where his SecDef is for 4 days when you got Israel, Ukraine, China? Like, in 4 days, did Joe Biden at some point not go, now where's Austin at? Anybody know where Austin is? I haven't talked to that dude, and I can't get a hold of his deputy because she's in the casino at the San Juan Grand, slinging dice. Absolutely crazy.
I think this goes back to what I believe part of what's going on is that Blinken is the one running the show and making most of the decisions. He and his office, he and his department,
Agreed.
I should say. So, SecDef is just kind of on the back burner as what tends to happen when the State Department takes over. Because what have I said about how the State Department views the military? Even Lloyd Austin, the decorated 4-star general, they view DOD as a caveman with a giant mallet walking through a china shop. It's like, don't touch anything. That's how State Department views DOD. But my question is two things, Roger. And I said this to Josh. Either one of you guys can answer this. Two questions is, well, one, first is what should have happened? What should he have done? Because I think that's important. And number two, why hide this? Because it's like Josh said, man, a lot of people knew what was going on. So why hide it? And we can discuss whether he has prostate cancer or not later. I think that's an excuse just to usher him out the door. Because as much as we rag on Biden and everything, it's still the office of the president of the United States. And what was done in this case was wrong. Even if Biden didn't notice, whatever, what was done was wrong. So, Roger, follow up, or Josh, whoever wants to take it. What should have happened, number one, and two, why hide it? What's going on here?
Well, you have official protocol, which the chief of staff is the official notifier, right? But in reality, and so there's a formal way to do it. The chief of staff would come out and they would, put out their, they make their phone calls, send out the emails or whatever. In reality, it should have been Lloyd calling up, hey, Mr. President, just give you a heads up. I know there's a lot going on in the world. I have a procedure I got to take care of. I've got A, B, and C. I expect to be out 2 or 3 days, not being put under. My deputy's been briefed. She's ready to rock and roll, and I'll resume command, January 4th or whatever. That never happened. I'll go back to the very beginning when you were like, if private such and such, took off for 3 or 4 days, dude, not even in the military. What if you worked at Burger King and you didn't show up for 4 days? Guess what would happen? You would get fired, right? Like, what world do we live in? And the left defends us. And believe me, the whole prostate cancer thing is just like tugging on string. He's got cancer. He's got cancer. Can't touch him. Can't touch him. Right. But it's like, dude, the other piece is this. It's going to get fixed. Okay. It's going to get fixed because the chief of staff has put out a memo to investigate this procedure and what went wrong. And like I mentioned in other news, the chief of staff is the formal notifier, right? It's what Josh said. It's the fox guard, the hen house. It all comes down to this. Are you really surprised? I mean, is anybody really shocked? Look at this entire administration. Is anybody shocked? I would like to believe, okay, now this is being overly optimistic because I don't know why you hide this. I don't think you do hide this. This is deliberate to me. This isn't, but I don't think he's that smart. To me, going back to what you're saying with how the State Department views DOD, I'm like, okay, State Department, you want to poop all over me? Good luck. Go handle this bag here for the next 4, 5, 6 days. I'm going to go do what I got to do. And hey, maybe something happens, maybe it doesn't. And you know who's going to have egg on their face? You guys are, not me, right? Hey, I've got prostate cancer, man. You're running the show over here. Be big bad dog, right? I want to believe, because that's what we would do. Like, go on with your bad self, handle your shit. I would want to believe that is what he did, but he's such a stooge, right? He's such a stooge and such a crony. There's no way that that's the reason why he did it. I don't even believe that it crossed his mind, because it goes back to, what you guys have been saying for the last 3 years. Who's running the show? Who's minding the store? And we've said this from the beginning. With Barry, you didn't like him. You didn't like his policies, whatever. Didn't have to. There was no question who was in charge. And with this administration, I don't know who's in charge, and I don't think anybody is. I think he delegates. I think his staff, who's as incompetent as anybody out there, I think they just delegate. Oh, you're the SecDef, so hey, you're in charge of all like defense stuff. So go make those decisions. And your State Department, you go ahead, go do all your Title 24 stuff or Title 22 stuff. That's your stuff. You go do that. Department of Energy, go handle some energy stuff. There is no, hey, back brief, because it goes back to like what John said. They're not even asking. There's a little bit going on in the world right now, right? And there's been quite a bit going on in the last, 3, 4, 5, 6 days. Like not one time, the president, the vice president, the National Security Council, Blinken, all those guys, nobody was like, hey, where's Lloyd at? Is he all right? Or, hey, better yet, Happy New Year, Lloyd. How's things going on your end? Like, nobody did any of that stuff.
Apparently
Dude,
not.
Come on, man. You
Apparently
can't sell me
not.
on it.
Because you can't think like, so it's crazy. I'll say a couple more things on this is, okay, hey guys, we have the opportunity to to take out one of the top PMC commanders in Iraq. It's inside Baghdad, right? It's in town. It's in a city. Okay, well, we need to make sure. Okay, we're going to do this. What's the second and third order effects of this? Blah blah. All right, hey, let's get the cabinet together. And whiteboard this thing. All right, yeah, all right, hey, everybody here. Let's do a quick roll call. All right, National Security Advisor. Okay, you're here. All right, Department of State. All right, you're here. Department of Defense. Who you got over there? Staff Sergeant Snuffy. Okay, you're sitting in for the sector. Okay, got him. Like, nobody was like, hey, where's Lloyd at? What's ironic, and it's just, it goes back to the hypocrisy of this administration and the ineptness. Last summer on July 13th, Lloyd Austin did an interview with Wolf Blitzer, and he sat there and said that Senator Tommy Tuberville's holding up officer promotions was a national security issue. It was a national security issue because, quote, officers are not in place to make critical decisions when they are needed, end quote. So apparently Tuberville was a national security threat for holding up officer promotions because they wouldn't be in place to make critical decisions, but Austin could disappear for days on end, and not a big deal. That dude, that is absolutely insane. And you said it. The Secretary of Defense, when the Secretary of Defense for the United States travels the globe, people look at him like, that is a dude who carries a very big stick. All right. That guy has a budget of $840 billion. That guy has 3 million employees that work for him. So you know what that means? We get to know where he is. We get to know when you go on vacation. We get to know when you go in the hospital. We get to know when you travel. That's what that means, buddy. You just don't get to up and disappear for days on end. And then, like I said, try and get out. Well, I have cancer. I don't care. I don't care if you have cancer. I truly don't. You are an American servant.
But what was this? You said this. You asked this. So you're on his staff. You're just like, oh, I've got the next 8 days off. Seriously? What did they do, man?
I got a buddy. I got a buddy in the White House Communications Agency. I'm gonna hit him up and ask him, just like, hey man, I got a question. Oh, you know what? Even better. Hey, we all know a dude. We all know a dude up in the Pentagon Force Protection Agency. He'd be like, hey man, do you have some time off here recently? Some unexpected time off?
Yeah,
You didn't have to do anything?
I just don't know if they're going to have visibility on that because Roger, you guys are somewhat familiar with the business I work for, and some folks that are, 3 levels above me, that person could take some time off and I wouldn't notice. Yeah, I'm busy doing my job down here, which is part of that portfolio, but I wouldn't notice if that person was gone. I just keep doing my job. Very few decisions have to go up to that level, but I don't know, dude. So have you guys heard? We can jump around and talk about whatever you guys want. We can talk about Jews and tunnels in New York. What the fuck was that?
What in the world is going on with that?
That was weird. And the fact that everyone was so worked up about it, like there was a
tunnels were okay.
Yeah, right. It's like, basically, I don't want to go belabor this too much because it's just too weird. This was not. We need to make bingo cards, dude. We need to make bingo cards and come up with the most off the wall stuff you could possibly think, because Jews in tunnels in New York City would not, like, how would you even think of that? But basically, there's a synagogue in New York City where these Hasidic Jews had made tunnels that were going under apartment blocks and stuff to get in and out of the synagogue. And I think I read one report that they started these tunnels during COVID so they could sneak into the synagogue or whatever. But you can imagine the kinds of conspiracy theories that are coming out about this. And it's just, I don't get it. I don't get the anti-Semitic, all that stuff. I don't get the Jewish conspiracy theories. We've belabored that before. But have you guys heard the world's worst press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre? Apparently, there's somewhat of a feud between her and John Kirby, because everyone believes that John Kirby should be the White House press secretary.
Sure.
And honestly, that should be the case, because, again, when John Kirby talks, even if he's talking about stuff I don't agree with, I'm like, you know what? I really like the way this guy is talking. He's making a good point. He's trying to communicate with me as an American about how the White House views this particular point. He's a communicator, like Ronald Reagan was back in the day. Hey, look, you may not agree with me, but just hear me out. Maybe I'll bring you around to my side. I like the way he talks. And Karine Jean-Pierre is just an absolute train wreck.
She's a moron.
She's a moron, and she's condescending. She's condescending not just because the press pool, like, we all hate the media and stuff like that, but that press pool that's there, they're asking questions they believe they're asking questions on behalf of the American people. And she's treating the press pool very condescendingly unless they ask a question she likes. So what does that mean? That means she's treating the American people condescendingly unless we ask a question she likes. So John Kirby doesn't really do that. He's stern, but he's not condescending. But apparently there's a lot of this. There's a lot of, a lot of this between the DEI hire, which was Karine Jean-Pierre. She checks a lot of intersectional diversity boxes, and John Kirby, who's a straight white male. We know who's going to get that job these days. But I just thought that was interesting that there's a lot of
well, he's like a retired two-star, I think, right? I think he's like a retired.
2 or 3. I'd have to look.
Yeah, so, I mean, he's a smart dude. So like you said, you may not agree with him, but one, he can get up there and articulate, especially what's going on in the world. Like, the guy, you may not agree with the decisions. He's not making them. It's obviously coming out of the White House, whatever. But the guy knows his stuff, and he knows world events. And I think, like you said, I've watched him several times, and I think they actually brought him. I forget what his official title is now, because he's like the, quote unquote, the helper to the press secretary, for the White House or whatever. So basically, anything that gets overly complicated, we're going to bring in John Kirby and he's going to have this discussion. But at least he has the discussion. And when he gets to a point to where even reasonable folks say, okay, I can see you wouldn't, divulge any more information on this because of current ops or this or that. He just, hey, look, this is kind of where we're at. We have ongoing things, going on and that we're planning. And, that's enough. And people generally, I think even the press, they generally accept that. with Karine Jean-Pierre, it's like you said, dude. Like, it's one thing to be condescending. It's another thing to be condescending when you're the dumbest person in the room. Okay. And everybody knows you're the dumbest person in the room, but the only person who doesn't know that you're the dumbest person in the room is you. Yeah. That's what's so frustrating from her. I mean, I thought Jen Psaki was bad, but Josh, I mean, this chick has got to be 10 times worse than her, right?
Oh, 100%. At least with Jen. See, here's the thing with Jen Psaki, like, I could not stand the sight of her face or the sound of her voice, but Jen Psaki, when she got up there, she could hold her own. She could hold her own. You know, she knew the talking points. She knew, you know, what to say. She knew how to push back on people. You know, I mean, she could do the job. Dude, KJP is she's a bumbling idiot. She doesn't know. She's got to constantly go back to her, to her notebook, time and time again. She's not quick on her feet. And she's an absolute disaster, and like you said, John Kirby knows this stuff. John Kirby's been around the block a time or two. He knows, he can point to you, unlike Dan Crenshaw. John Kirby can say, yeah, I know where Dagestan is. And here's what Dagestan is.
And I have two eyes.
And yeah, I'm not Eye Patch McCain. It's I had heard there was some contention there, but you will not see KJP get canned for John Kirby, in the same way you won't see Lloyd Austin get fired. They cannot fire the DEI hires in an election year. They can't. They can't, and they will not do it. The most that's going to happen with Austin is he's going to come out and say, hey, I do have cancer. He's going to use that as an excuse, even if he doesn't have cancer. I think he's just trying to curry sympathy with the cancer thing. It's like, I need to, go focus on my health and blah, I'm going to step down, yada, yada, yada. I think that's how, he goes, if he goes. But there's no chance in hell that Biden is coming out and saying, I need him to resign. I want you to resign. Not happening.
So let me ask you something else with the Lloyd Austin thing, because this goes to the Marine Corps Commandant as well. So the Marine Corps Commandant just had open heart surgery. Apparently, Lloyd Austin just had elective prostate surgery. Like, why are they hanging around? Like, if I've got cancer or I'm having open heart surgery, the last thing I want to be doing is anything to do with the government or whatever, right? SecDef, Marine Corps Commandant. I mean, one, there's plenty of other qualified folks out there, but I think I actually want to look at my health and maybe living for the new year. Like, why are they even hanging around?
Ego.
Unbelievable.
It's all ego. They cannot help themselves for whatever reason. They cannot do it.
What's next, Josh? I think you wanted to talk about something.
I can't remember.
Was it Fannie Willis's lover?
Oh, Lord. Yeah. I don't know. So for those who weren't tracking, and this is not a bombshell. So Fannie Willis, the DA in Fulton County, Georgia, Atlanta, she brought charges against Trump, for, everything under the sun, to include unpaid parking tickets. And come to find out that the prosecutor who is prosecuting the case is also banging Fannie Willis. And, now they're reporting that guy, rolled in a time card for like 24 hours saying he was working. And, now they're looking at, that's a felony in the state of Georgia. Because of the amount and everything. So, but the fact that the DA that's bringing charges against Trump, and then the prosecutor who's prosecuting the case are having an affair, that really shouldn't surprise anybody. I mean, that's not going on my bingo card, because it's largely inconsequential. Jewish tunnels in New York, I wouldn't have put that one on there either, because that one was just too much. I guess if we have Jewish space lasers from a year or two ago, then Jewish tunnels shouldn't have been that far of a leap.
Dude, I just saw the greatest meme. It has the the Hasidic Jew coming up out of that tunnel in New York City. You saw the video, right? Where he's coming up out of that tunnel and you're like, I don't know what's going on here. He's coming up out of the tunnel. He's looking around. And this guy said, saw his shadow, 8 more weeks of war in Gaza. Oh my God. Man, there are some witty people out there, man.
Yeah.
Oh, good grief.
Did you see the anti-Israeli the anti-Semites vandalized the veteran cemetery out in Los Angeles?
Yeah.
There was actually a couple of people on X, and we're talking about people who were skewed pretty hard left. Dude, even they came out and they were like, "All right, I'm done. I'm done supporting the Palestinians because they crossed the Rubicon on that one." It's like you're vandalizing a veteran cemetery. It's not even like, and you're vandalizing Christian graves. It's like, dude, Israel's not a Christian nation, right? You tracking that? It's like when people got all upset at Ben Shapiro on Rogan, when Ben Shapiro, when Joe Rogan's like, hey, do you believe in Jesus? And, Ben Shapiro said, well, I think Jesus actually existed and he was a Jew who, got what was coming to him. And people were like, I can't believe Ben Shapiro doesn't believe in Jesus. It's like, that dude's Jewish, right? And they're like, well, yeah. It's like, do you understand what different fates are?
No, they don't.
Do you understand Jewish people don't like? I don't understand how these people get through life not understanding shit like this. Like I don't.
It's two cults. It's two cults. You got the cult on the left and you got the cult on the right. And so whatever that story that comes out that fits that narrative, that's what they go with. They don't learn anything about it. They're not objective about anything. There's no due diligence on their own. There's no, hey, sometimes I agree with the right. Sometimes I agree with the left. Most times I'm down the middle or whatever the case is. Even if you're far left, hey, at least be educated on the topic and be able to have that discussion and say, you know what, this is why I believe in what I believe in. Right. They can't do that. They're uneducated. It's a million KJPs.
Well, that was like the American the tax coalition came out and was like, unrealized capital gains need to be taxed. And you're like, what? Say that again. Say that again really slow. And see what those words like. Just say it again really slow and roll it around in your head for a minute. Unrealized capital gains need to be taxed. Like, how are you going to tax that? It's like, be very, very specific. And they're like, well, what do you mean? It's like they're unreal. Like, oh geez, it would do. That one was painful. Like that one was painful. Like there are some stupid people out there.
Returning to the Jesus and the Muslim thing, or not the Muslim thing, the Jesus, Jews, all that stuff is that a lot of people out there. Roger has it just right. I mean, there are just as many cultish followers on the right, and they piss me off worse than the left most times.
100%.
Who don't realize, excuse me, that the Muslims, to them, Jesus is a prophet. They don't have a real big problem with Jesus. I had a Muslim break it down to me. He's like, look, man, we really don't have a problem. Our biggest problem with Christians is y'all believe in 3 gods. You're not monotheists. Because we do have the same God, but you broke him into, 3. And it's like, you try to explain to them what the Trinity is. It just does not compute in the mind. It doesn't compute. It's 3, but it's 1. And they're like, no. It's 3. And it's like, no, dude, you can go back and forth, but their problem is the 3 gods thing. Their problem with the Jews is very simply, it's like, yeah, you're monotheists, but ours is real and yours is not. Muhammad, revealed the true God, and y'all's God, you worship a false God, and you think you're the chosen people. It's like a slap in the face. But, people don't realize that. Very few people, I think a lot of people who listen to this podcast probably understand that within the Muslim faith, Jesus is revered as a prophet, same as Muhammad, not the same as Muhammad, but he's a prophet like Muhammad. And people don't realize that. It's sad. And the unrealized capital gains is hilarious. So Tesla does really well one year, and you're going to be taxed on your unrealized capital gains because you haven't cashed in your stock yet. What happens when that stock falls? Do you get
Yeah.
Refunded? How does that work when your portfolio isn't doing well? It's the most, and you know who is a big believer or was a big believer in unrealized capital gains is Pocahontas herself, Elizabeth Warren. That woman, it's like you hear Ben Shapiro talk about her, and it's just like it's hard to believe. He goes, she actually is intelligent. She's not an idiot. Like she was at Harvard Law, and I know that doesn't mean anything. She probably just plagiarized everything. But he's listened to her speak. He's actually taken courses that she's taught. And he's like, she's not an idiot. So I don't know where all this crap is coming from. You know, it's come from special interest, from lobbyists, stuff
Pandering.
like that. But pandering
yes.
to
the base, right? To the extreme base. You know, and I tell you what, you ask what happens when you take a loss? Nothing. It'll be just like the DMV right now. If you go buy a car in another state, in most states, okay, this is what I've experienced. You go buy a car in another state, you bring it back to your home state, and you register. If the tax in your home state was higher than the tax in the state that you bought it from, you have to pay the difference, right? You have to pay registration fee on top of that. But I'm like, well, okay, which doesn't make any sense to me because I'm like, oh, I didn't buy this car in Arizona. I bought it in New Mexico. Like, I don't understand that. Well, what if the tax in New Mexico was higher than what I paid here in Arizona? Do you guys give me that money? Oh, no. Yeah, the tax thing pisses me off. You know, we talk about this all the time, and you know, especially as we tweet back and forth, or we text back and forth, because at the end of the day, one of the reasons by electronic payments, one of the side effects of electronic payments is people don't realize what they're paying. And I'm a firm believer when it comes to the taxes, it's like, you know what? There should be zero federal income tax. There should be zero federal tax. The federal government should have a budget, right? And what they owe as far as operating expenses, whatever, should be divvied out among the states based on the amount of representatives that you have in the House of Representatives. And then your state should determine how they want to collect that. Hey, if they want to collect that payment based on property taxes, so be it. They want to base it on income tax or sales tax or whatever. They get to choose based on their own localized economy there, how best to collect those fees. You know, because dude, at the end of the day, I just want to know, it's like, just tell me what I owe. But you know what? They can't tell you that because it's like they say, I was watching Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps the other day. And he's like, what's your number? And his answer was like, more. That's the government's answer. It's like, so what's my number? What is my tax number? More. It doesn't matter what you make. It's more. Pisses me off. I know we kind of went on a tangent there. So I want to kick one other topic around real fast, real slow, whatever. So, and not really talking about him specifically, but talking about more the precedents it's going to set, because I don't think the ruling has come out yet, but you've got the Trump immunity case being heard right now. And basically what Trump is arguing is that things that he did as, during his time as president, I think there's already civil immunity that's been ruled on in the courts, if I'm not mistaken, but he's talking about criminal action, right? That he's immune from any criminal prosecution for official acts that he took while he was president. And from what I heard earlier today, it sounded like now the three judges that are hearing this, it's the DC Circuit Court. One is a Bush appointee, and I think the other two are Biden appointees. But so far, and these are all reading tea leaves, that just based on the line of questioning that the judges were asking, it sounds like the circuit courts can be like, no, you can actually be held liable for all that stuff. So Josh, let's play the slippery slope, air quotes, logical fallacy right there, right? So if they find that presidents can be held criminally responsible for official acts that they take while they are the president, where does this lead to beyond just Trump? Where does this lead to?
This leads to every Republican president in the future being sued for what they did while they were in office for. Because and we talked about it a little bit. It's not going to be every president gets sued because the GOP doesn't have the stones to do it. So it's basically going to be every Republican's going to get sued while they're in office. What should happen is that, outside of something completely illegal, completely good. So it would be, he's dead, so it's a moot point. But let's say, the Watergate. Do you sue Nixon, in that time? Do you sue him for Watergate? You start taking it a step further. Do you sue W for the war in Iraq, for people lying about WMDs? Do you take him to court? What about Bill Clinton? Do you sue Bill Clinton for prosecuting the air war in Kosovo and killing killing civilians on the ground? Do you sue Obama for the war, the failed surges and stuff in Iraq and Afghanistan, and for the civilians that were killed? Where does that end? Because it doesn't end anywhere good. But if you want to play that game, then we'll play that game, because this is the only way this stops. The only way this nonsense stops is for you to fight back the same way. Guess what? What was the last thing you heard out of Disney? You ain't heard anything out of Disney. Once that Reedy Creek district went away and got modified very heavily, Disney shut up. They're still going to do what they're going to do, but they are not being vocal about it. Disney's not running around spouting DEI shit right now, especially with their latest couple of movies have completely tanked, and they got thumped. They don't enjoy some of the tax breaks that they enjoyed up to this point. And a lot of people gave Ron DeSantis a lot of grief for using the law and using his office as a cudgel against them. And guess what? It comes down to how do you deal with a bully? You punch him in the mouth. You punch them in the mouth until they stop bullying people, until they stop bullying you. That's the only way this stops. This is not, and I've said it before, this is not some sunny meadow on a Sunday afternoon where we're playing by the Queensberry's rules anymore. You can think that that is the case, and you can think that, and you can stand on your moral high ground right up until the time they put you in a train car, and then you can die, I'll die with my honor intact. Okay, well, that's great. But as Anton Sugar said in, No Country for Old Men, if the point of your rule, if your rule brought you to this, what was the point of the rule? Paraphrasing there, it's not his exact quote, but you get it. So, yeah, it's not going to lead anywhere good, but hey, fight fire with fire. It's time that the conservative and the GOP push back and do the same thing.
Yeah. So Roger, how does it end with Trump? How do you see this going as far as all the court cases go, and how that affects the upcoming election?
Well, from what I'm hearing, from the pundits, they're basically saying Jack Smith and all these other folks that are trying to prosecute, their backs are up against the wall, because they want all this stuff to happen before, obviously, the primaries, which that's not going to happen. The Iowa caucuses next week. New Hampshire follows shortly after that. But the way it looks right now, this is going to run beyond the general election. And in my eyes, you have a problem. Even when the voting starts for Iowa, at that point, you have a problem. You have a severe problem. And I think that you're seeing that in the last Biden speech, with them trying to control the narrative, because it does begin to look like a banana republic. You are targeting your political opponent. You won't let them speak in court. You won't let them speak out of court. You don't want them on TV. You don't want them on X. You want a gag order. You're going to bring all these charges against them. You're going to, you file charges that haven't been used since like the Civil War, as opposed to just beating him at the ballot. And it goes back to, and I think Luke, you posted this, or you texted this. You can always tell how good the administration's doing, now, especially during an election year, because if you're doing well and you've done well, when you get up there, you campaign on your accomplishments. You campaign on your achievements. And the only thing Biden has done through his first speech that he gave the other day at Valley Forge was campaign on how bad Trump is. Right? Threat to democracy. I keep hearing that. Threat to it's right up there with insurrection now. Like I don't even know what it means anymore. It means nothing. You use it over and over and over again. I've just become desensitized to it. And you use those terms and you target him because you can't defend what you have done in the last 3 years. And the goal is to take people's eyes off the ball and say, hey, don't mind what you're paying for gas right now. I know you're paying more than you were. I know that I know mortgage rates are through the roof. I know you can't afford a home. I know wages compared to inflation is down. Inflation rate has not gone, the inflation rate has gone down, but inflation has not gone. Never mind all that stuff. Never mind what you see in your wallet. Trump's bad. Trump's bad. So I don't know what the end result, how that plays out, because I mean, in theory, they bring all these charges. Let's say it runs beyond the general election. And if Trump wins, it's all over with anyway. But if Trump loses, if you're the government, do you continue to waste time and resources to go after him after this stuff? That, I think a lot of it, like Josh said, with the immunity thing, I mean, there is a process to hold the president accountable. And they use that, right? They impeached him. They impeached him twice, and it went to the Senate, and it was overturned, or he's acquitted, or wherever the proper term for it is. So they have handled the criminal side of that, in my opinion. My legal, limited legal, aptitude. That they've handled that, in my opinion. So you open up a can of worms to where, and I agree with Josh. The GOP just won't do this. It's like, dude, I can't wait for the thousands and thousands of lawsuits that come from just your ordinary Americans. It's okay. I can sue the president now, because there is a ruling there for a reason. Because otherwise, the president or former president would be tied up in so much litigation. Nobody would want to be the president anymore, because basically every single action that takes place during your presidency and during your administration, you'd be held accountable for. I mean, there's no way. So I do think, and I already hear them trying to parse. They're trying to. Well, what he was doing was really campaign mode, not president. The dude's president 24/7 for 365 for 4 years, right? But they're trying to carve out, well, was he really acting as president during this period, or was he really acting as a candidate? No, he was acting as a president, because that is a very, very fine line that I don't think you want to get into. So I think that the circuit courts with this will say that he's not immune. I think SCOTUS, I think they balk at it. I think they've already come out and said that we're not going to rule on this before the general election. So it'll sit there, and there'll be a stay, or they'll hold it off or whatever. And they're just going to see how things play out. But it's a very, very dangerous road that you go down, because the lawsuits after this will be endless. And then touching on, and I know we've got listeners that disagree, but going back to what Josh was saying with Disney and everything else, there is a term for it, and it is called lawfare. And what's happening now, and this is what we've got to come to realize, is the left is already doing this. They are already doing this, and they've been doing it for years. And what's going to end up happening? They are going to legislate your ass into jail, is what they're going to do. Okay. It's not they're coming after you with guns and pickets and torches and this and that. They are going to make whatever it is that you believe, whatever it is that you say, whatever it is that you are doing that is against their narrative. They are going to make that illegal and give them a reason to put you in jail. Right. That is how that picture ends. That's how that movie ends. So, I get fired up about it, and I know our listeners, they get fired up about it as well, because there is the moral high ground, and hey man, moral high ground. They're going to legislate your ass out of this.
The moral high ground, so to speak, is why we don't win wars anymore. The moral high ground. Could you imagine, like, people are all upset right now because, the IDF has killed, a couple, I say a couple, probably more than a couple, but, not that many. At the end of the day, they are trying to limit civilian casualties, but there's some business civilian casualties in Gaza, but and the world is like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. Could you imagine dropping an atomic bomb on a major metropolitan area in, today? You imagine what the moral outrage would have been if Hiroshima and Nagasaki would happen today? Yeah. Not only we do it once, but that's why we don't win wars anymore. And that is it. It's funny. So you brought up the insurrection, the worst day in American history since Pearl Harbor. Did you guys hear that Ray Epps got sentenced for his role in the quote riot? So Ray Epps, everybody knows he was that big dude in the tan shirt and the MAGA hat, telling people to go to the Capitol. He's running around on multiple videos, telling people, well, you should go to the Capitol. Just don't do it right here. Go to the Capitol, go to the Capitol. Yeah. So the leader of the Proud Boys, that Tariq guy, whatever his name is, he wasn't even there that day. He got sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. A lot of other, people who participated in that have been sentenced to years in prison. A lot of them are still in prison and haven't even been sentenced yet. So Ray Epps, who's on video, directing people to go to the Capitol, stoking the flames, shoveling coal into the furnace, he was sentenced to 1,000 hours of community service and 1 year probation.
Yeah, seems fair to me.
And what makes it even better, right? Because we've been told, right? I've been reliably told that this was an insurrection. An insurrection. That word has been, beaten to death. Again, worst day in American history since Pearl Harbor. An attack on our democracy. They almost overthrew the government, guys. When the USA Today and the AP reported this, the headline is this, quote, Ray Epps, falsely accused as federal agent in January 6 conspiracies, gets probation for Capitol riot. End quote. Now all of a sudden, it's not an insurrection. It's just a riot. Now, when you start talking about the lectern guy, who walked out with Pelosi's lectern, he was an insurrectionist. They charged, and the headline for him was, insurrectionist and whatever his name is. He's on X as the lectern guy. It's hilarious. That was an insurrection. Ray Epps, who they keep saying is absolutely not a federal agent, which means he is, or at least he's a contractor on the, he's on the take. Not an insurrection. He's just a riot. It was just a riot. Like Roger said, people, and listen to this, write it down and underline it twice. Either you start fighting back or they will legislate your ass into a train car. I'm telling you right now, it's going to happen. So you need to set aside that moral high ground bullshit and get your fighting pants on. And you got to fight dirty. That's just the way it is. That's it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much sums it up. And it's a shame it's come to this point. It really is. But I think the narratives are set for 2024. January 6th was an insurrection, regardless of what Ray Epps got charged with and got his probation for. It was an insurrection. It was the worst thing since the Civil War. It's awful. And everyone who doesn't vote for Biden is racist. That white supremacist.
Pretty much
those are the two. I don't know what Trump's narratives exactly are going to be, but he is the presumptive nominee. I don't care how much they're talking about Nikki Haley's going to win New Hampshire and all this nonsense.
She won't come close. I'm calling it right here. She won't come close. It won't even be. She won't get into single digits.
What?
I'm calling it here first.
Overall, she may win
just in New Hampshire. I don't think she wins New Hampshire.
Oh, you
I don't
really?
think she comes. I don't think she comes within single digits in New Hampshire.
How is she still in the race?
I don't know.
That kills me, dude.
She is. I'm not a Nikki Haley fan. I think have we gone over this in this podcast? She sums up her outlook on everything. She says dumb things too. She just says some really dumb things, but she embodies everything I did not like about George W. Bush. Like you take everything that George W. Bush did that I don't agree with. That's all Nikki Haley. Yeah, I'm not a fan, and I don't know what's going to happen when or if Trump picks her as his running mate.
No way, dude. There's no way he picks her. No way.
So who's he going to pick? Christy Dome?
I think he picks somebody just out of the blue, or I shouldn't say out of the blue. I don't think he picks any of those governors. I think it's somebody that we're probably not familiar with that, whatever he feels that he's going to gain, some traction, with. I mean, look at Mike Pence. I mean, everybody from Indiana knew him. I wasn't familiar with Mike Pence at all. Now that may have been more of an establishment pick, maybe.
How'd that work out for him?
Well, he did win once, so 50-50. Hall of Fame in baseball.
I don't think he picks a nobody. I don't think he can.
So who's he pick?
I don't know. Ray Epps. Tucker.
We've already got you on the
Tucker
payrolls.
Cross.
It's just easier.
It's just I think, dude. I think he has to pick somebody with a big name that's going to help him because he dude, he can't help himself. He's going to have somebody that's going to help him, and it's going to have to be somebody who brings in those establishment drones. And Chrissy Nolan's
That's fair.
not that person. Chrissy Nolan's not that
fair.
person. Nikki Haley's that person. Nikki
From
Haley
that
is
point,
that person.
yeah, that's a very good point. That's, I think when you, and that's very similar to the Mike Pence pick, right? If he was an establishment guy, I was like, hey, you need to bring the establishment GOP base over to the Trump side, and that's how you do it.
Yeah, because the other thing that person's going to bring is money. They're going to bring the RNC, with them. And I don't know that, because at the end of the day, Trump is, he shit on everybody, that he, picked the first go around, and so he's going to need some help on the establishment side. and also, Nikki Haley gives him that. So I'm not calling it right now, but man, if it was gun to my head right now, I would say Nikki Haley's gonna be his pick, because, and she also continues to not rule it out. Whenever she gets asked about it, she sidesteps it. Ron DeSantis has emphatically said absolutely not, under no circumstances, absolutely not. So, which
is the
in
smart
the
call.
world
I
of
think it's the right
politics
call for
doesn't
him.
mean anything. But what's that?
That's probably the right call for him, though. And I think rumor has it that if Trump wins Iowa and Ron doesn't have a strong showing, that he's going to go ahead and cut his losses right there, drop out of the race. They can handle it. He's going to go back to becoming governor of Florida, and you look at 2028.
Yeah. Yeah, because if he comes out and says, "Yeah, I'll be Trump's VP now," I think his 2028 chances go down.
Yeah, there's no reason for him to. Yeah, he's like, let it play out and let's see how it works out. Because here's the other thing. It's kind of like the dog chasing the car. Here's one thing that scares me about Trump, because I liked his presidency for the most part. There were obviously bad things that didn't go well, but my wallet overall enjoyed his presidency. But there's a little bit of the dog catching the car here, where he wins, and it's like, dude, you better perform now. You better execute. Like, I expect I expect my wallet to fill back up, and those type of things. I expect interest rates to come down. I expect the market to get better, the economy to get better, that type of stuff. And that stuff's hard, man. There's a lot of moving pieces with it. And at the end of the day, it's like, I think with the three of us, one thing that does separate us and our listeners from a lot of other folks is, hey, Republican, Democrat, whatever, we elect you and we support you. You better execute and you better perform, because I have no issues calling him out either if gas goes up to $5 a gallon. Like, we're not dumb. We know what causes the prices of fuel to fluctuate. I know it's not just the president, but I tell you what, I bet about, I'd weigh 50% on it. Last thing I have before I kick it over to Luke. Have you guys heard that Ashley Babbitt? I think her family, she's the one who was shot, right? She was the one who was actually shot during
killed.
Whatever you want to call it, and killed. And she was shot by a Capitol police officer. Have you gone back and heard the audio to that?
Yeah. Yeah, that dude lied. He said that they were being shot at first when
Yeah.
nobody was shooting at them, and then he smoked her. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that her family filed a lawsuit against the Capitol Police. So that'll be very interesting, because I'm kind of curious on how much of that makes it public and how much more information comes out, because a lot of people don't realize this, or our listeners do, because we've told them, but I don't think the Capitol Police are subject to FOIA requests.
They're not.
Just
no,
like
they're not.
The Speaker
They're
of the
not.
House. However, you get sued, a little bit of a difference there. There's more info that tends to come out. So at the end of the day, I'll be curious to see what happens with the Ashley Babbitt thing. And then I think you posted it earlier, or Josh, I think you X'd it or tweeted it or whatever. One of the guys you follow is pretty smart and kind of in this line of work, because he noticed the verbiage difference between agent and asset, and how they're, referring to Ray Epps, how the language of agent is starting to be used where everybody, officially, he wasn't an FBI agent. He wasn't an FBI agent. Well, we're not asking if he was an FBI agent. We were asking if he was an FBI asset. Those are two totally different things. So, it's weird. It goes back to what sounds the same, and to the common person, they don't know the difference, but it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
So go back and listen to some of the Ray Epps talking on those videos. Ray Epps has some street craft training. Go back and listen to him. because he throws a couple things out there. You're like, your average Joe don't know that.
Dude, I'm going to his house.
Couple of key terms in there.
I'm going to his house, and if I see moving trucks, C3 is going to have a live interview. It's going to happen,
bro. That would be that'd be good. Ain't bad.
Well, you know what? If he is moving out, that'd be a good space to put some asylum seekers, because apparently, and Josh posted this earlier. You sent it out to us. There are a grouping of schools in New York City tomorrow that will be closed tomorrow because asylum seekers, I should say, will be sleeping in the school's gym. So they're canceling school tomorrow. I think that's a travesty. We've talked about the immigration thing, and we don't have much time left in this podcast, but man, it's not getting any better. It's just not getting any better. And this election is just too easy to win. And I know Josh don't like talk about Trump, but I think a win is still unlikely at this point. I'll agree with Josh on that, but I do see somewhat of a path to victory for a Trump campaign. I think it's there. Whether he'll take it or not, I don't know. Probably not. But as long as Biden keeps talking about, and I think Roger was saying it in a text or something, as long as Biden keeps talking about white supremacy and January 6th and all this stuff, your average independent voter truly doesn't care about January 6th, and they don't understand all this talk about white supremacy because it does not exist on any type of meaningful level in the United States. They know when they're being gaslit. And why did people vote for Trump in 2016? Everybody was just fed up. Everybody's just fed up. It's like, well, I know I was. It's like, I'll show you. Trump wasn't even my candidate of choice. But it's like, well, I'm going to do the Joker on this one, inject a little chaos, because one thing about chaos, it's fair. And I liked it. So I can see some chaos presenting itself. I mean, there's Jews crawling out of tunnels in New York City. All kind of crazy shit.
Like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah.
I'd like to touch on the immigration thing again in the future. Because there's just a lot of stuff going on, man. It's crazy that December was record breaking in a lot of different categories. This last December broke every record in the book, and it's like nobody's talking about this. And as the pastor, Obama's former pastor, said, the chickens are going to come home to roost. And when you're starting to close down schools in New York City because you're housing asylum seekers that have been bussed up from the border, man, I'm going to say it one more time. I'm going to kick it to Josh about this whole busing and flying migrants. 95% of these people or more are going exactly where they're requesting to go. Don't let the news, don't let the media tell you any different. Don't let these, sanctuary city mayors tell you any different. That Greg Abbott and all these border states, they're shipping the illegals up here against their will. That is not the truth. The truth is these people come with a little piece of paper saying exactly where they want to go. A lot of times they'll write it in their shirt tag. They'll write it in the tongue of their shoe so they don't forget where the address is. And the federal government and the state government, in a lot of these cases, are sending them exactly where they're requesting to go. New York City, Chicago, California, Maryland, Virginia, or Northern Virginia, Maryland. They're going where they're requesting to go. So anyway, don't let people fool you. That's what's going on. I've seen it myself. So Josh, I mean, we talked about a lot tonight, but Ecuador is about to blow up.
Yeah, it's bad in Ecuador right now. Everybody keep an eye on that. It's getting pretty chippy. So the Ecuadorian president came out, declared war on the cartels and gangs. So the cartels and gangs promptly took over TV studio while it was live on the air. They took over a prison. They hit a university. They took over something else. I can't remember, but now they're executing prison guards and Ecuadorian police on on Facebook Live and on X. and everything. So if you if you have folks in Ecuador in any capacity, you need to reach out and check on them and make sure they're okay, because it's gonna get bad. And also, just to some sleep well notes on that for all the Canteeners out there listening to this. A lot of those same people that they declared war on are coming through our porous southern border. With record numbers. I think since September, there's been over 600,000. And that's not the gotaways. That is we made contact with over 600,000, illegal aliens coming across the border. I will tell you that the active duty United States Army number stands at about 420,000. That's just the Army. All right. So basically, and that's active duty. So basically, an active duty army of non-U.S. citizens cross our southern border since September. So, do that information what you will, vote accordingly, and sleep well. So that's going to do it for this episode. We stopped counting episode numbers. Like, we don't, dude, I don't even know what episode.
This is 140.
Is this 140? Okay. Yeah, dude, because we do the warm intros now. We don't, we don't start it off by saying episode whatever. Well, we were screwing that up anyway.
Josh is like, we still have a podcast?
I see the text every now and then, but like, we're recording now. I'm like, oh, okay. So
he thinks we're just on this big FaceTime call, that we chat, once every week, 10 days or so.
It's a lot easier than texting all this shit. So, all right. Everybody out there in Canteener land, you guys keep those canteen cups tightly secured, put some good booze in them, and buckle up, because 2024, it's going to be a banger. Get those bingo cards ready.